What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I'm going to break down what's going on with Tesla stock and what you should be watching for going forward. I'm going to talk about SPY, the QQQ, Nvda, and a couple of tickers out there, and talk about why tomorrow is going to be a very interesting day as we have Jerome Powell speaking. I'm going to break down when he's going to be speaking, how this may affect the markets, some important levels to watch for, what the news is saying about Tesla, as almost all the news that just came out about Tesla has been very bullish, and what the data is telling us about this company going forward. Before I break anything down about all this information, let me just mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And finally, don't forget about the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed 5 free stocks with a $100 cash reward with other benefits. The offer ends in just about 10 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Tesla was up 5.34% for the day, getting a very, very nice pump, and this was looking very strong moving forward. However, in the morning, things were very, very capricious to start us off. Now, when I was looking at the technicals, let me just start off right here in my morning update video. I told you guys that just based off the technicals, Tesla was looking a little bit bearish. We were looking kind of weak just based off this chart right over here. We were seeing this like 4-hour crossover on the PPO. On the 4-hour, it was looking like a lot stronger, and it looked like Tesla would get like a pop, then a bit of a drop afterwards, and that's what I was thinking would end up playing out. And I released it in this video right over here. I warned you guys about this potential move. And then I released the video, and after I released the video, some very bullish news ended up coming out. And that was the fact that right over here, Rivian announced that they're going to be adopting Tesla's supercharger. They're going to be using Tesla's supercharger connector, and they're going to continue to partner with Tesla going forward. Rivian doing this was very bullish news, and this helped Tesla hold up and outperform the market going forward. There was also news about how Hyundai is now interested in doing the same thing. This is once again very bullish news for Tesla because the EV charging infrastructure is now going to be controlled by Tesla, and it gives them a lot more power over the management of this, and it's going to help Tesla build a lot more revenue. This was great news for Tesla as their energy business is continuing to grow, and the supercharger networks being controlled by them is once again very, very awesome. So Tesla continued to hold up and pump because of this, and there was more news that came out about how Elon Musk was going to be meeting with India's Prime Minister Modi. This was great news again because as Elon Musk is meeting more and more of these figures, it has been disclosed that Musk will be talking about a potential gigafactory expansion over there, potential plans for it. He's going to be discussing this with Modi. They're actually meeting up, I think, in the USA, though, but once again, it doesn't matter where they meet up as long as they shake hands and they're continuing to just negotiate and talk it through. That is good news for Tesla. If Tesla ends up announcing some very, very big news because of this could be very bullish too, but it's not confirmed just yet. Elon Musk did talk about how there are many difficulties with working in India. He mentioned that previously. And Tesla has done some things such as incentivizing politicians to just give more plans about Tesla moving forward. So this is very, very good news. Moving forward, this helped Tesla pump as well, and sometimes unexpected things could happen. So let me just clarify something. When you look at the pre-market for Tesla and many stocks, it's looking like the pre-market is just not a very sufficient way of dissecting what's going to happen intraday. And for that reason, I'm not going to predict based off the pre-market anymore. But what I will do is just look at support and resistance levels. I will mention the pre-market just temporarily, but it's just not very, very accurate a lot of the time. And we're going to be watching this on a level to level basis during the pre market because sometimes unexpected news could come out during the very beginning of the trading day. And on top of this, during my intraday updates, I will talk more about the trend and what it's telling us. And I will talk more about, predictions and etc. later on in my videos. So the question is, why have I not made too many prediction videos recently? Well, it's not that I'm staying away from that. It has more to do with the market itself. If we go back to some historical data, you could see that for the market, a lot of things have gone on very recently. So if you look at like last week, for example, we had CPI coming out. I couldn't really predict that, and that's the reason why I told you guys to be prepared just in case. Then on Wednesday of last week, we had PPI and the FOMC meeting. Once again, I just could not predict how that would play out. We had so much data coming out. Then for Thursday, we had all this retail data coming out and like the jobs numbers and all of these different things. So that I did make a prediction, I think, on this day, but it just was a little bit more difficult. Then for Friday, we had lots of inflationary data coming out, lots of Fed speakers and OPEX expirations. So that was a little bit trickier to predict as well. The point I'm just trying to make is that there's lots of data and a lot of these external things coming out that make it a little bit more tricky to predict what the market's going to do. And I really had to just tell you guys the bear and bull cases. And I did read the trends and tell you what the trend was telling us, but I do apologize that I'm not always able to give you guys as accurate predictions because of all this like noise out there and all these like pieces of news. And for this week, okay, it's going to become a little bit more tricky. And that's because looking at this week specifically, we have big news coming out. We have Jerome Powell, who's going to be speaking very soon. So starting tomorrow, 30 minutes after the market opens, Jerome Powell is going to be speaking at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time. Now, for now, the technicals look very bullish on Tesla, and there's a good chance that if Tesla does dip because of this, it's going to be bought up pretty quickly. But just to be safe, we have to watch support and resistance, and I don't know for sure what Powell is going to say. Now, I will talk more about Powell in just a minute. Let me just remind you guys that for Wednesday, Powell is speaking at 10 o'clock a.m. And then on Thursday, again, Powell has another testimony coming up. And then after Powell, we have a ton of Fed speakers, I think on Thursday. I think tomorrow we have more of them. So tomorrow we have loads of Fed speakers. When they speak, the market tends to move. So we have to be ready for this. But anyways, about Powell, who's he going to be speaking in front of? He's going to be testifying in front of Congress, basically, but not specifically just Congress, but the committee members. So for Wednesday tomorrow, once again at 10 o'clock a.m., he's going to be speaking. That's 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time. He's going to be speaking in front of the House Financial Services Committee. And then on Thursday, he's going to be speaking in front of the Senate Banking Committee. So why is this so big? What does this have to do with the future? Historically, let me just remind you, the bigger day tends to be the first day that Powell speaks, and he tends to not say as much during the second day. That's what happened during the last couple of times he spoke 2 days in a row. Additionally, let me add that the House committee members have a tendency of asking more stringent and more specific questions. So it's more likely that we're going to get more detailed information on Wednesday, and the bigger moves are going to be made for Wednesday than Thursday. But just to be clear, the reason why this is important is because we're going to get a lot of data about what the Fed's monetary policy is going to be. Is the Fed going to raise rates more? Is the Fed going to be like planning on doing anything different from what we're expecting? Is Powell going to talk about inflation? All of this is going to affect the markets. Remember that time when the market was just trading sideways, then Powell just said the word disinflation and the market just exploded? This happened a couple of months ago. There's a possibility something similar could happen, just to be safe. Powell could pump the markets very hard, or he could cause the markets to rug pull. But for now, based off the current trend, I'm going to talk about why the market is still continuing to be bought up despite that. Now, for Tesla, let me just add that before I talk about Tesla, we have some earnings coming out. We had FedEx and just a couple of others. Nothing too big. We have CarMax for Friday, just a couple of them. And once again, for Tesla, when it comes to the news, lots of good news came out involving Rivian, potentially Hyundai adopting Tesla's connector, which is very awesome. We have Elon Musk potentially going to India, meeting up with India's prime minister in the USA, which is still very bullish news. And then we have Cathie Wood, who announced that she sold some of her Tesla shares, a ton of them, hundreds of thousands of shares, and made millions in the process. But it's not the end of the world. You don't have to worry about this. They reposition all the time, these large like hedge fund managers and etc. So it's not really a big deal to me that she is selling, at least securing some profits, and she's going to try to reposition on Coinbase. She said she's bullish on Coinbase. I do agree on that, looking at the chart. She sold about 393,000 Tesla shares not that long ago, and then another 73,000, and I think another like 62,000. So she's been selling hundreds of thousands of Tesla shares for the time being at these high levels. Could this be a red flag? It's a possibility, but there's no confirmation of that on the chart. And she, some people could argue she sold kind of early. But either way, I mean, like I say before, when it comes to like trading, profit is profit. So I just wanted to make that very clear and as honest as possible. When you are trading, you don't want to just be like sticking to one position forever. You don't want to be like adopting and just falling in love with your position. So, for instance, when I traded, I had puts on SPY in the morning, right? SPY came down, and around these levels, as this thing started to show signs of a bounce, I secured profits. If I kept holding them, I would have lost my money, right? As this thing made a rebound, and then as there's like data decay going forward. So that's the reason why you have to be very quick when it comes to moves like this. And this is why like a lot of news is coming out about how Cathie Wood is selling. She could just be repositioning and doing different things like that. It's all just part of strategy. It does not mean that she's bearish on Tesla. The news may try to show us that, but it's not always the truth. Anyways, looking at the data before I talk about the charts and what's going to happen to Tesla and the markets likely going forward, we have some good news. It looks like the Model 3 listing levels dropped considerably. I don't know if this is a glitch or not. It looks like a crazy drop, and we saw a bunch of them being bought up. Could it be because of this news right here? Because of the tax credits for the Model 3. I was just reading this not that long ago. Basically, people could save loads of money. According to Tesla's website, the new Model 3 was about $32,000 as of mid June with the federal clean tax credit factored in. And then you have to subtract the additional California tax incentives of like $7,500, and the price of the Model 3 could be reduced even more, according to a lot of this data, making it just as cheap as the Toyota Camry. Now, this really depends on if you qualify for these tax credits and many of these requirements. It's not going to work for everyone the same. It depends on like income and a bunch of other factors. But like I said before, this could be incentivizing more people to buy these Teslas because I think there's a very big drop in the Model 3. But we have to wait and see if this is confirmed. I don't know if this is a glitch or not. I'm going to have to double check on that. This is the most recent data. If the Model 3 is dropping this hard as we're getting very close to the refresh, that is super bullish news. We're continuing to see lots of Teslas being bought up near the end of this quarter, and that's very, very good news. The Model X listings went up a bit, which is not that bad. But for the Model Y, they're also dropping very hard. If the Model Y and Model 3 models and the inventory levels are dropping very hard, this hard, that is very good news for Tesla. We're seeing a bunch of them being bought up. That is amazing news. I'm very excited for what they're about to report. We're just a couple of weeks away before Tesla reports their like Q2 deliveries report. That's going to be very big for the company as well. I can't wait for that. I really hope we get some decent numbers as a result. Looking at the volume, Tesla has high volume above average. 164 million is well above the 154 million previous target. On top of that, the short volume is continuing to drop. Now, I also want to add that Wedbush is saying Tesla is going to outperform the markets. Tesla is in a very, very good zone right over here. We can see a lot of this support right over here from the volume nodes, and it's continuing to hold up nicely. Tuesdays tend to be green about 51% of the time. June, it tends to be a green month for Tesla, or at least we're green about 78% of the time in June. June is like almost 75% done so far, and Tesla is still holding up very nicely. So historically, this is meeting the trend. Tesla tends to do better during the second hour of the day and also during the fourth hour. That tends to be its strongest hour. And continuing forward, I mean, the trend is still holding. Tesla had a high short interest. We saw about 63.4 million Tesla shares shorted in total about. And as a result, it's been dropping and dropping and dropping. Now we have about 44 million Tesla shares making up the short interest. That tells us that we're still seeing crazy short covering. The shorts are still causing Tesla to go up as they cover. And there's still lots of buying pressure by the algorithms continuing to buy up these Tesla shares. So I'm going to close some of these tabs real quick before I start transitioning into the video. So let me just address that in the morning, I made a mistake. Well, I wouldn't really say that in that manner. It's more like I did not have enough data to make the claim that Tesla would just explode. Then I had to step away for a bit. So it took me like a couple of hours before I made the next video. But in the morning, Tesla was not looking that strong in the pre-market. I'm not going to predict based off this anymore. It's just not working very well. I'm just going to talk more about support and resistance during the pre-market. For the intraday update, I will talk more about the trend and support and resistance. And then today, I'm going to talk about the same thing during the post-market updates, and I will talk more about what's likely to go on going forward. Just want to make that as clear as possible, and I will continue to do predictions later on once we get lots of this noise cleared up. It's because there's so many people, so much news out there that's causing this noise that's harder to predict and stuff like that. But anyways, let's talk about Tesla. During my intraday update, if you guys watch this video right here, I actually recorded this a couple of hours before the market closed, so you had another opportunity. And I told you guys that if Tesla held above this 270 area, it was at 270, watch 272. If it breaks that, it's probably going to pump to 275. That is almost exactly where Tesla closed at. So I did redeem myself a little bit as the day went on. It happens like that. Now, when it comes to Tesla, the trend is very strong. It's continuing to hold up very nicely and it's continuing to be bought up. I don't see Tesla really crashing tomorrow with all this buying pressure and this very strong trend, but I do believe Powell could cause an increase in volatility when he starts speaking 30 minutes after the market opens. Now, if Tesla is bullish, let's just say Powell pumps the markets very hard and the market starts pumping because of Jerome Powell. If that happens, watch resistance. It really depends on where we open. The 277.8 area has some like resistance and support. So we're going to be watching that zone very carefully. Break this. The next important level is like 280. If it breaks that, there's some resistance at like 282.8. We saw Tesla get a rejection here in the past. Wasn't that significant? The more significant resistance is going to be around 285 to 286. Now, is this the hardest resistance ever? Not necessarily, but it's worth noting based off how it may affect Tesla tomorrow when it comes to scalping and intraday price volatility. Now, if Powell causes the downside move, now I'm not saying that I'm giving you the prediction just yet. I'm just talking about the more bullish case and the more bearish case. If Tesla starts cooling off, you're going to be watching support at 275, 272, 270, 268, 266 to 265, followed by 262. I don't really see it dropping that low, but I'm just noting these levels just to be safe. Now, what's likely to happen tomorrow based off the current price action? The trend looks strong and bullish. Okay, it's very bullish, very strong, just not any sign of weakness in the trend right now. However, if Powell causes this thing to like cool off, the market cools off a bit if he says something that's like very hawkish. The thing is, Tesla's getting lots of buying pressure. There's a high probability we're going to see buyers try to defend their positions, and it's very strong right now. So that's the good thing about Tesla. I don't see it like crashing very hard. It's likely going to get bought up if it does drop when Powell speaks. And if Powell pumps the markets hard, this thing has the potential to break into the 280s pretty quickly. It has support and resistance around these areas depending on where it like opens and etc. And all of these support zones also become resistance if it breaks below them, and resistance becomes support if we break above them. Let me add that yes, we have some resistance closer to like 280, but the much stronger resistance is going to be up here between 285 and 286 compared to these levels. But make sure you watch all of them carefully. So what do I think is going to happen? It depends on Powell. Honestly, I don't know what he's going to say. That's why I just can't really predict this perfectly. But I do believe based off the trend, buyers are stepping in. They're trying to hold up Tesla, and they're likely going to continue to do it tomorrow. And I do believe Tesla's going to see some volatility in the morning, but it's going to try to hold around these levels, or at least make an attempt to do so. And if it continues to pump more as the trend is still looking very strong, you want to see how it reacts to 280. Break 280, and this thing has a lot more room to continue pushing. For SPY, if you're bullish on SPY, you're going to be watching 438. If it manages to break and hold that, watch the 50 EMA on the 1 hour time frame. Break that, and this thing could go to 440, then 442. If it breaks the high it made at almost 444, if it manages to break and hold this high and it keeps going, this thing could go closer to about 450 in my opinion. If it breaks to the downside, you're going to be watching support at 436.64 to 436.25. If it breaks below this level, watch 435 as support. If that breaks, we're likely going to get very close to like 433. And if that fails, there's 430, which is where we have major support. Now, what do I think is going to happen? Well, honestly, guys, I'm prepared for both the bullish and bearish cases, okay? So you need to be prepared just to be safe because Powell can be capricious. But we have a possible inverse head and shoulder structure that's starting to develop. There's also this gap above here during the pre-market. So the odds are favoring the market maybe cooling off a bit and trying to push up. It's a little bit more likely for that to happen, but I'm always open-minded because anything could happen depending on Powell. Okay. And so far, there's been a trend where, besides on Friday, the market tends to like cool off in the morning and starts pumping later on. That's another trend worth noting. So the odds do favor the market trying to push up, but it's not a guarantee. It really depends on what Powell says. I just want you guys to be prepared for that, and I just wanted to note that. Additionally, let's just go over some of these tickers quickly. AMD, it has a potential bullish divergence developing, but it hasn't gotten confirmation of a bounce just yet. Resistance is at 120, 121.38, and 122.8, and then potentially about 125. If it breaks down, you're going to be watching this 118 as support. If that fails us, then it could get closer to 115. For now, there's a bullish divergence, so it's a little bit more likely this thing is going to try to push up above 120, but we have to wait and see, and it depends on Powell. NIO has a very big deal that was closed. It got a very, very big amount of buyers that stepped in, and we saw a massive investor step in from another country, so that was very big. If it's bullish, it has to break and hold 9.5 to get to 10. If it's bearish, watch $9. If that fails, it could drop more. For the QQQ, My analysis is almost the same as SPY, basically. If it's bullish, watch this thing at 368, 370, and potentially 372 and 375. If it's bearish, watch 366 as support, 365, 363.8, and potentially 362 and then 360. I'm in the middle with the QQQ, but if Tesla pumps hard, this thing could help the QQQ hold up. It's holding up quite nicely, and there's a possible inverse head and shoulders. It's just not as clean looking. It's a possibility. We also have like this potential imbalance level up above. That tells me that there's an increased probability of this thing trying to get a reversal thanks to Powell. It's a little bit more likely, but it's not a guarantee, and we have to be very careful. I'm saying that because I don't know what Powell is going to say. If he's way too hawkish, it could slow the market down. If not, the market may make an attempt to do the opposite. So anyways, I just want to make that very, very clear. Watch both support and resistance, and just know it's a little bit more likely this thing may try to reverse based off this current structure, based off this bullish divergence. But it's not a guarantee. It all depends on what Powell says. I don't know what he's going to say about the rate hike, so just be careful. The bonds traders are just in the middle. It's basically sandwiched on the HYG between the 50 and the 200 EMAs. If it breaks to the upside, this could lead to more buying pressure. So far, they're in the middle right now. They're a little bit indecisive approaching Powell, so they're still selling off a little bit. That's why the market closed kind of red. But we have to be careful. On the NASDAQ, there's no confirmation of a break to the downside, but there's a possible head and shoulders developing, but there's no guarantee it's going to play out. This could be a trap as always. If you want to turn bearish, you need to see this thing break and hold below the 50 EMA on the 1 hour time frame. If you're bullish, you need to see this thing continue to break above resistance around this 13,750 area. If it breaks that, it could make its way closer to the higher 13,000s. It's in the middle right now based off this head and shoulders. It's just in the middle, so I really just depends on Powell. I just don't really know for now. But we're just going to be careful and wait and see what Powell says. So the NASDAQ is looking like it's in the middle. SPX is looking also like it has a similar structure. There's a possible like head and shoulders like development, but there is this gap up above, so it could try to invalidate this or start pushing up. This could be a trap, so be very careful with all these traps. If you want to turn bearish, watch it break below the 1 hour 50 EMA. If it breaks that, then it could start downtrending and get closer to about 4,300 or lower. If it manages to hold above it, you're going to be watching this gap around this 4,400 area, and it could continue to break out even higher moving forward. In my opinion, even though there is this head and shoulders, it's not confirmed. There's no confirmation of this playing out. So it does not make sense to assume it's going to play out immediately. And if anything, it held up quite nicely for today. So there are still lots of buyers stepping in, and it does not make sense to turn into a mega bear just yet. And you need confirmation first, and there's no confirmation yet to do that. The VIX is suggesting that the market may have more upside. The market may push the VIX down a little bit more. It has this gap that's unfilled and it may continue to drop a bit. So we'll see where it opens tomorrow and what happens with Powell. So for now, we're just going to watch this. There's just not enough confirmation on the VIX. It's trying to base, but it's still, once again, just trading sideways. Same thing with the dollar. The dollar came up, but then it cooled off a bit, and now it's just trading sideways. If it breaks below the 50, it could continue to downtrend. Watch 102 as support. If it continues to break to the upside, watch 102.89 as resistance. Whichever direction it goes will dictate how the market moves. Coinbase is looking more bullish to me, continuing to break to the upside on the 4 hour time frame. There are lots of these imbalances above. What I mean by that is just like what Cathie Wood said, she's bullish on Coinbase. She probably bought in beforehand, but we have this imbalance at like almost 59. There's another one around 64. So I'm assuming this thing is going to get closer to 60 very soon. Looks more bullish. Powell may cause it to cool off a bit, but overall the trend is still strong and there's no confirmation of it actually breaking down. Aapl is in the middle at 185. If it's bullish, watch 185 as resistance, 186, 186.5, 187.5 as the major resistance zones. If you're bearish on Aapl, it's going to come all the way down to retest this like 183.75 area, very close to that. If that fails, watch 182.65. Break that, and that's going to be a trend change most likely. It's going to come down to 180, then potentially 178. For now, it's in the middle, so it all depends on Powell at this point. For Nvidia, this thing is holding up nicely. There's a good piece of news and a bad piece of news for the bulls. The bad news is there's a bearish divergence developing. The good news is there's no confirmation of it just yet, so there's no guarantee it's going to play out as of right now. If you're bullish on Nvidia, watch 440, 444.7 to like 445-ish, and then around 450. If you're bearish, watch support around this 435 area, and if that fails, watch 430, then potentially 4 425, 421, 422, and then potentially 420 after that. And if that fails, let's watch 409. So there's a lot of support holding up Nvidia. It's still showing some strength, but the problem is there's a bearish divergence developing. And we have to be very careful with this. It all depends on Powell. If Powell pumps this thing harder, it could push these resistance levels. If Powell causes a rug pull, this thing may start to cool off a bit. So I'm going to be very cautious with Nvidia because of this bearish divergence. And we're just going to have to wait and see how this moves, especially during the market open. For Google and Amazon, they're both very similar, just getting very tight. If Google makes a big move to the upside, so because it's getting tight, it's going to make a big move. If it breaks to the upside, if it breaks 125, watch this thing go up to 126. If it breaks to the downside, watch 122. If that fails us, it's going to come all the way down to about 120. For Amazon, it's also getting kind of tight. If this thing wants to turn bullish, watch for a potential backtest of this bullish triangle. So it tried to form a bullish triangle and broke below it. If it manages to break it back into it, it has the potential to break 128 and potentially 130. If it rejects off this like 127 area and comes right back down, the major support is 125 around the 50 EMA. It needs to hold this for the time being. If it breaks below it, you're going to be watching the support right here around this like 124 area. If that fails us, it's going to come down to the 122s and potentially 120.63. So there's both a bull and bear case. It really depends on Powell. Just don't know what he's going to say tomorrow exactly. He could say bearish things. I'm sorry, he could say hawkish things, or he could say dovish things. It's all depends on like his perspective. There are different perspectives you can use for the same data. So very important to note, and I just wanted to make that clear. Last but not least, for Meta, there's a potential bullish structure developing looking at the chart. It's continuing to hold up quite nicely, but we have to be careful. If it's bullish, watch 287.5 as resistance, then potentially 290. If it's bearish, it's going to come down closer to about 280. If that fails us, watch 276, 273.5, 272, 270, then 269 as support. It looks more bullish from a technical standpoint, but it all depends on Powell. So with that said, guys, thank you all so much for listening. For Tesla, let me just remind you guys, watch support and resistance just to be safe. However, from a technical standpoint, it looks very strong, and the odds favor that even if Powell causes Tesla to slow down a bit, if he says hawkish things, the buyers will likely still try to defend Tesla around a lot of these levels, especially around like 270. If not, if Powell pumps the markets more, Tesla's going to be well on its way past the 280s, in my opinion. Still looks very strong, very, very nice. Okay, so overall, the bulls have the edge on Tesla, right? If it comes down, the bulls will just buy it up and try to defend their positions. If it pumps more, it could just push past 280, and then we're going to be watching 282 and then potentially the 285 zone, which has stronger resistance, but overall looks very good. So very, very nice to see Tesla pumping like this. We're getting closer to their delivery date for the second quarter, and overall the market is still looking quite decent. So please watch support and resistance levels. I'm sorry that I can't always give predictions because it depends on so much data. It depends on like what Powell says, FOMC, CPI, all this data and stuff, which I can't always predict. But I will still give you predictions in the future. I'm not really stepping away from that in its entirety. I will still do that going forward once we have like more clarity when it comes to all this data. And with that said, I just want to thank you all so much for listening. Have a great day, everyone. Tesla and the stock market to the moon as the long term is incredibly bright. And I'll see you guys tomorrow morning for another morning update video. Thank you and peace out.